Well, howdy y'all, welcome back to The Social Regressive. I think I'm the last reviewer on the planet to review the Arken SH4 Gen 2 that you see in front of me here, but I have something very different to say about this than a lot of other folks. I think I've only found one other reviewer that came to the same conclusion that I did. So if you are considering an Arken, I think you really ought to listen to this. I don't know if this is systemic or what, but the long and short of it is that I'm not going to put this scope on any of my rifles. I never will. I can't really see a good reason to, and I'm going to explain why. There are a lot of things about this scope that make it almost perfect. I love the reticle. This is the mil version, by the way. There's mil and MOA. I got the mil one. I can use either, but most of the time I like the mils. But yeah, great reticle. It has good controls. Everything about it is set up very crisply, very precisely. Everything just kind of feels good about it overall. It's a good form factor, good setup. And it has one kind of Shakespearean tragic flaw that is going to keep it from being useful for me, and I'll explain why. Let's start with some of the good stuff first. This is the SH4 Gen 2 4-16 by 50 millimeter, so you get a great big lens on this end, and you actually get a pretty good ocular lens on this side. And by the way, the tunneling through this scope is ridiculously low. It's one of the greatest things about it, in my opinion. There are lots of other scopes out there that you have, quite a bit of tunneling. It may have a good image, but you get a whole lot of black. And with this one, you just get this great, huge image up to your eye, and I really like that. You just kind of get a wide field of view with it. At the back, we have the fast focus eyepiece. This is actually very slow to move out in the cold, and that makes me really happy. I don't much care for a true fast focus eyepiece because there's never a time when I want it to accidentally be bumped and spin. I don't want this to be really quick to turn. I want it to have some resistance, and it certainly does. The controls for magnification, we have about it's a 180 degree throw between the 4X and the 16X on this. And remember that there is the 6-24 as well. I wanted to get this one for more practical use. This would be a pretty good hog sort of setup. But it has a really good zoom to it. It's nice and smooth, no hitches, nothing going on in here. And to aid in some of the difficulty that you might have in cold weather like this, you can actually purchase for a very small amount of money a throw lever. So this is actually just something you can add to your cart when you purchase this, and it'll attach right up there and make this a breeze to operate out in the field. Now remember, it does have a 180 degree throw, so if you have anything weird in the way, just be aware of that. It's going to go from side to side really, and I think that most of you won't have any interactions. Moving forward, this has a first focal plane reticle. This is the VPR, the Viper mil reticle in this one, and I really like it. It has a good combination of some fixed stadia to help you find the center when you're really zoomed out. And then when you're zoomed in, it has all kinds of wonderful complication. I like any reticle that's going to emulate the Horus H59 or one of those other kind of complicated reticles. Because for me, I don't necessarily want to have to dial out in the field in order to get my shot. If I know that I need to hold over 3.2 mils and hold off 1.7 for wind, I'd actually prefer to do it in the reticle so I don't have to take my hands off the gun or take my eye out of the eyepiece. I just want to be able to look through there, make the adjustment, and take the shot. If I'm in a slower situation where maybe I'm not dealing with fast-moving animals or dangerous animals or anything like that, then fine. I can take the time to get on the controls, click this around, and get to the right spot. But for most practical shooting, I want a good reticle that's going to allow me to deal with motion, with wind, and with elevation, and to do it really quickly. And this does it. Everything's just clear, very easy to work with. On the side, the parallax adjustment, again, makes me really happy. This is very smooth. It's lighter to turn than the other controls back here. This one spins very neatly, so it's not likely to throw off your shot. And this actually turns all the way down to 25 yards. So you can get up close and personal with things. If you have a rimfire rifle, this scope actually will continue to work. And it's just, really smooth all the way around. No hitches, it just feels wonderful. It feels, overall, this whole scope feels Japanese, not Chinese. Just on the outside of the parallax adjustment, you have your illumination dial. This is gonna take, I think, a CR2032 battery inside there, so it's gonna be your standard. And then it has off positions between each illumination. It's red illumination only, which is just great. That's gonna preserve your night vision. And it goes 1 through 6. There we go. So yeah, it lights up the reticle really nicely, and yeah, you get to pick your levels so that everything's gonna be nice and clear for you out in the field. If you live in an area that has some variations, like maybe you're gonna be shooting under trees, maybe you're gonna be under a lot of tree cover, or maybe you're shooting into a darker area and you still wanna be able to see that crosshair, especially at the lower magnifications, then yeah, it's nice to have illumination. You can get a pretty quick acquisition on your target. And one of the things that I should mention about the reticle in here is that it is open in the very center, so you're gonna have a clear shot of your target if you've dialed up here. I really like that. Stadia aren't too thick. Yeah, it's just a really nice setup overall. And one of the things that I really dig about an FFP scope is if it has the right zoom ratio. Sometimes you can get into extremes of zoom ratio where the reticle becomes unusable, and 4X, easy to use. I mean, it's just a classic setup. 4X, you're not gonna get too small in the reticle, you're not gonna get too big, it's just gonna work all the time. Now for tracking and the turrets, these turrets are fantastic. They feel good, they sound good. Oh, listen to that. They just snap right into place and they do not wiggle around. This really is textbook. This is kind of benchmark setup for how this feels. Yeah, that is lovely. It does not have locks, but it does have a zero stop that's actually incredibly easy to use. You just have a couple set screws, and once you get these in position, your zero is set, and then you can spin all the way up. It's not one of those that's fixed to just one revolution. Once you have set your zero, then you can go ahead and crank this as far as you like. And speaking of as far as I like, let's take a look at that elevation adjustment. We're talking about 36 milliradians of adjustment. That is massive. It's a 34 millimeter tube. This is a big chonkin scope. It is heavy. This is definitely for your prone or other supported types of rifles. This is not going to be for hunting and that kind of thing unless you are, off a tripod. So if you're hunting pronghorn, yeah, this could probably work just fine. But yeah, even just kind of schlepping it around, this is going to be very heavy. But 36 milliradians of adjustment, that's massive. 14 milliradians left and right, that's going to be plenty. I normally do not dial for wind. In fact, I very, very rarely ever do. I don't find a good reason to do that. I always use the reticle for that. One of the strange things about this is that it has 8 revolutions per turn, which is kind of strange. I definitely prefer a 10 kind of setup, so I can go 10, 20, 30. This must be set up for the MOA to begin with. Usually that's the kind of thing it's going to be. It's either going to be 8 MOA around or 16, something like that. And then it looks like they just kind of stuck with that for this and used a different thread pitch on the screw on the inside. But one thing that I'd like to point out that I really like, again, there's just so much to like about this rifle scope, is that when you have dialed up, you get graduations. So you can see how far you've gone. Love that. And here, let's just click it right back down to 0. Clunk, stops right there. Zero stop feels great. One of the really cool things, again, is that both of these feel really similar to each other. They have a very similar feel. Sometimes you'll get into a scope that has turrets that feel different, maybe going right than going left. This is just consistent all the way around. Just wonderful. The mechanical precision on here is wonderful. And as you can see in my box test, this just clicks through everything with ease. I could spin these as fast as I want. I could abuse this scope, and it's going to come back to 0 every single time, and it's going to hit every one of those subtensions that I want if I want to take one of those longer shots. So between that wonderful reticle and the turrets, I'm going to have no trouble getting on target. A couple things I should mention. I talked about the weight and how it's big and heavy. It is 35.6 ounces. It is huge. And then the eye relief on this end is going to be 3.6 inches. So it's kind of minimal. You have to be pretty close up, and it's not the easiest scope that I've found to get behind. This is one where you have to be pretty precise with where your head is. As long as you have your rifle set up correctly, you have a good cheek riser, and you know where you're going to hit it every time, not a problem, but I just wanted to point out that it's not the easiest to get behind. This features HD glass, and it has excellent coatings that do a very good job of preventing any of those internal reflections. If you have a bright light that's not too far off the axis where you're viewing, it's unlikely that you're going to get any kind of bloom effects in there. Like if you are shooting roughly toward the setting sun, it shouldn't really bounce around in here much. You're gonna resist a lot of that. And you can see, if you look at me pointing the scope around at the sky, you can probably see just the barest of reflections, but really not much happening inside there. So this, has really good coatings. Some of the other good stuff, when you go to checkout, you not only have that throw lever that you can throw on there, you can actually just kind of purchase this little package that comes with the scope. And I think it's gonna include this, this pouch. This is gonna be one of those rear shooting bags. You can just fill this up with airsoft BBs or whatever you feel like, pea gravel, and that should be a pretty nice shooting bag. It kind of feels like a heavy Cordura or something, like kind of a heavy nylon. It has a strap so you can hold on to it pretty easily, and it's got its logo on, so that's pretty neat. I think the patch was also part of it, so you get this embroidered patch. There's a lens cleaning cloth that came in the box, a sunshade that came with the scope. That is great value for money. I really don't like it when folks have, especially a higher magnification scope, and they don't include one. They make you buy it extra. That means you have to pay shipping and all kinds of stuff, so it's really cool they threw that on. Some of the extras that I purchased were a 34 millimeter scope level, so I can attach it onto here if I ever do put it on a rifle. I don't think I will. We have optional rings that you can purchase, and they get really, really low. It's tough to find low rings for especially 34 millimeter scopes. And these have some of the lowest that I've seen in the industry. And they just seem to be very nicely built. They're pretty to look at. And they have a fair amount of metal on them, so they should do a pretty good job. We also have some scope caps. So they have them automatically fit for you. They're pretty attractive looking. Yeah, they're plastic with some rubber at the back, spring loaded. But they look just fine. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, the box came with a description of the scope, how to use it, and what the reticle is like, and just how to use its various features. Came with a couple of stickers. That's pretty cool. And now we get down to the negative side and why I don't think I'm ever going to use this scope. And I feel really bad about this. And actually, I'm kind of upset about it because there have just been so many reviews, so many effusive, just, happy reviews about this scope. And one of the biggest things that people were talking about is its image quality, how much detail you can get. And, they were just stunned by the kind of how much use you can get out of this, especially for the price. Hush, Luna. All right, hush. This has HD glass in it, which sometimes looks quite nice. The first time that I used this was actually at night. I was just kind of glassing around our downtown. I was still at work, and so I was kind of looking out the windows, checking things out, and hey, hush. And I was really pleased with the kind of image I was getting through this. It looked an awful lot like the Nikon FX1000 4-16 by 50, same kind of setup. Really, the difference between the two scopes was so close that, and this is costing half as much. And I've seen this as low as about $300 for all that you see here. Well, at least, with the scope, the sunshade, and the stickers, and the lens cleaning cloth. That's all the stuff that comes in the box. But yeah, for $300, some people got this, and it really seems like a steal, especially that first night when I was looking around with this. Yeah, it really looked a lot like that $800 odd Nikon FX1000. But then came the day. I took this out in the day, and I was absolutely blown away by its chromatic aberration. This is not the first scope that I got from Arken. The first one, I took it out here, I set it up on one of my little rigs that I use for testing tracking and doing all kinds of stuff. And it was almost like I couldn't roll focus on any of the objects out near me. And it was just a perfectly clear day, nothing weird going on in the atmosphere. And everything just kind of looked like garbage, and I couldn't actually tell if I was in focus or not. The only way that I could tell that the image was supposed to be in focus was okay, I could test the parallax by moving my eye around a little bit behind the crosshair, behind the reticle, to see if it shifted around relative to that point of aim. And so I got the parallax nailed down. And really the only other way I could tell was just by how extreme the purples and the greens got at closer and farther distances. Remember that there are two kinds of these chromatic effects. You have the axial and the transverse. And this scope, hey, quiet, Daisy, hush, shoot. Little photo bomber here, I think she wants in. But yeah, it has both to such a great degree that I just couldn't really tell if I was in focus or not. And everything was just kind of this weird blur. It was like when your eye has a really bad astigmatism and everything just kind of shifts around. You see multiple objects, like versions of different objects. It was just kind of this real mushy mess. And so I actually contacted Arken, and they were cool with it. They said, that they would take it back and send me another one. So this is actually the second scope. And there are some times that I kind of wonder if they just took my own scope, bundled it back up, and sent it back to me. I think that this one actually is better, though. It's kind of tough to go back. I'll show you footage from the original. You can see it here. But this new one seems to be better, but it still has both the axial and the transverse chromatic aberration to such a great degree that I won't be able to see things clearly, like longer range bullet holes. I'm not really going to be able to see impacts. I will never be able to see bullet trace. And then one of the greatest things one of the biggest obstacles that any of us will ever run into when we're doing long range precision shooting, our main obstacle is not distance, it's not really our ammunition. We have good ammunition now. We have good rangefinders, so we can figure out how far things away. And we can dial really well with a good scope like this, and we can use the reticles to get on target. But if we can't see the wind, then we are not capable of getting our rounds on target. And that's one of the biggest things with this. I cannot read Mirage with this to save my life. And actually, that seems kind of poignant. If I did have to defend my life with this, if I'm dealing with maybe dangerous animals at a far distance are no problem, but if I am dealing with some kind of defense situation or something like that, I will not be able to tell what's going on out there. And this is not just reading Mirage. If I'm trying to read grass and other cues out there, this has a greatly reduced likelihood of me being able to see what's going on and at least very quickly get that information into the brain, get it into the equation, and then be able to take the correct shot. There are all kinds of scopes that are either at this price range or, typically a scope like this is going to cost at the very least 2 times as much. If you wanted to get into anything like this, at the very least, it's going to be 2 times as much, and that's going to be rare. Normally you're hitting about $1,000, or in the 900s to get into something that has all these features and all these goodies, and one that actually works and you can see what's going on. Because of that price point, I know that it's going to be really attractive to a lot of folks. And it could be that I just got 2 lemons in a row, and maybe some of them are just wonderful. I will say that there's indications that something's going on in here. Whatever resolution that it has it edge to edge. I like that. The brightness seems to be consistent edge to edge. And there's just so much work that went into this scope that I'm just baffled by how awful it looks as it gets brighter and brighter. The sunnier and clearer and just nicer the day gets, the worse this performs. It's like I would prefer to use this at night rather than actually during the day. It just kind of turns into almost like a kaleidoscope sort of mess. And I'm gonna show you here. Maybe it's not quite so evident here at just 100 yards, but especially as you start to step things back, it really becomes a tragic mess. Here's my resolution chart. And I don't know if this is really going to show all the effects. There are a bunch of scopes that I've tried out that have, either axial or transverse chromatic aberration, and they still work. Usually they have one and not the other, or maybe they have minor amounts of both. It's just that this one, again, that Shakespearean way, has tragic amounts of both. And I'm not the only one to see this. Eagle Eye Shooting he did a review a while back. I had picked up this 4-16 and I was really kind of cheesed about it, especially with all the hype and all the extra money that I put into the extra goodies to make this happen. To me it seemed like a good trade to get into $650 worth of everything that you see here on the table if this was going to perform as advertised. But he had a review that came out about the same time that I got this one, and he found the same thing. He had the 6-24, and you can check that review out. I'll put it up here, and he said it best. It was an entry-level scope. I don't even think this is an entry-level scope, you guys, because even though it has all this stuff, you're not going to be able to see the thing that matters most, and that is all those tiny little cues. If you want to be a long-range precision shooter, you have to be able to see all that stuff, and this just won't do it. The SH4 comes in anywhere from about $400 at its normal price. You can get it as low as $300, and I can really see why a lot of folks would be attracted to that. It is a bargain basement price, and based on the reviews that you see out there, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I can see why a lot of folks would want to pick one up. It makes a whole lot of sense. When I saw the reviews, I got really excited. I purchased this. I purchased all the accessories that you see out here. The total came to about $650, which is usually just the price of a kind of decent long-range scope all by itself without all the goodies that you see here. But in the end, I actually kind of got taken for a ride. And so I'm going to point you in some other directions. Now, as far as I know, you're not going to find anything with all of the really cool features of this scope for that same price tag. So I'm not going to try to point you toward anything that pretends to be that. Instead, I'm going to point you toward things that are in the similar price tag that have less, but actually work better. And then we're going to take a look at things that cost a whole lot more. So if you can save up your coin, the Tractoric is going to absolutely whoop, well, it's going to whoop most scopes when it comes to its image. That is some fabulous glass. That is some ultra high definition. It's either ultra high definition or it's extra low dispersion. Whichever one it is, they set it up right. That has one of the prettiest images that I have ever seen with some of the lowest chromatic aberration. It is just pristine and beautiful. No weird color cast. It is just a wonderful scope overall. They do have a 4-16 as well, so that's something to think about, but its price tag is going to be considerably more than this. I still recommend it though. Yeah, it's going to have a 30mm tube. It's not going to have as much adjustment. But if you are dealing with targets within 1,000 yards with your standard kind of centerfire cartridges, I think you're going to be a lot happier. You're going to see tons of wind. You're going to see all those little mirage effects. You're going to see bullet holes. You're going to see trace, all the stuff that you actually want to see and the things that make precision and long-range shooting actually work. One of the others that I'll point out is going to be the Zerotech Trace Advanced. I did a review on that up here as well, so you can check that out. And I'll put links down below to some of the other scopes that I reviewed and that I would point you in those directions instead. The Trace Advanced has a similar reticle, really good setup. It's a little bit on the thinner side on the reticle, so especially when you're zoomed in, you can really see very precisely what your target is doing. Yeah, it's kind of got the same H59 sort of flavor to it. Really pretty image. It gobbles up a lot of light and it has a pretty wide zoom range, so we're getting into a higher zoom ratio. That's going to be 4.5 to 27 by 50 on that one. There are the Bushnell Elite Tacticals. Again, they're going to be more expensive. If you're on the used market, try looking for the Nikon FX1000 4-16 by 50. That's one that I have for myself. Unfortunately, Nikon has stopped making scopes, but if you can find the FX 4-16 by 50 FFP, that is a really cool scope. It has a lot of the same superlatives that go on in here, except that it actually has 10 revolutions per turn on the turrets and a much better image. It's also quite a bit lighter. It doesn't get as much adjustment. It's a little bit less. I think it's about 30 instead of 36 mils. But yeah, it's a good bit lighter and just kind of more usable overall. We have the Bushnell Nitros, so that's going to be a 2.5 to 10 by 44, a 3 to 12 by 44, and a 4 to 16 by 50, I believe. And some of those will come in FFP as well. They have their Deploy FFP reticle. It's one that I've tested. It works. It doesn't have as many little things going on the inside, so if you want something that's just a little bit clearer, I think you might prefer that one. But its image is very nice. Great color. Again, no color cast or anything. Yeah, it's going to be just a little bit more expensive in the case of the 4 to 16, but they do go on sale all the time, so you can keep an eye out on that. one that I'm going to point out that I'm just about to review. I haven't gone through all of its features, but pretty soon I'm going to be reviewing the Falcon Endura. You guys know that I like my Falcons. That's still my number one LPVO on my ARs, is that S8i. But there's this new Endura 3.5 to 25 by 56. So again, big honking scope. It's over 30 ounces. It's heavy like this one. Yeah, 34 millimeter tube, lots of travel, which I think is 32 mils up and down, and then maybe about 20 side to side. So yeah, you get a very similar reticle on the inside, still FFP. It just doesn't have some of the features that you have on here, like illumination. But it does, I think, focus down to 10 yards, which is pretty awesome. If you want to use it for either rimfire or for center fire, you sure can. And because its image is so much better, and it's like, okay, this is an interesting one where, yes, I'm going to show that it has, especially, I think it's transverse chromatic aberration. It does have a fair bit of it, but because of the way that it's set up, it still continues to work, whereas this one doesn't. If you're out in a bright sunny field, yeah, you might see some colors kind of shift around as you move your eye, but it will work, and this one really won't. So yeah, I think the Endura is going to be really good, and that's going to come in, I think right now it's about $680 for that one, and then pretty soon we may see its price drop. So I'll give some kind of indication around here if we see that. There's the US Optics TS20X. That one, again, we're getting up to about 1,000 for that one if it's FFP. And that has a really wide zoom ratio and a lot of cool goodies on it. That one has all the bells and whistles, and it has a really, really good image. So that's one that I might recommend. Its only downside is that it kind of blooms some when you're at high magnification and you have a bright sky overhead. Something to think about. But yeah, you should check that out, and I have a review on that one as well. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys very much for watching. I know that a bunch of you in the comments are going to be talking about the EP5, that I got to try one of those. It's the best thing ever. But I've been burned on this. I'm really not interested in Arken anymore. I'm sorry to say it, but you know, they've sent me 2 of these so far. These were supposed to be the best things in sliced bread. Everybody's, you know, raving about these things. And in my opinion, these are lemons. I am just not interested in picking one up anymore. I don't want to buy another one. I wasted $650 right here. I can salvage some by using the rings on maybe the Falcon Endura. Maybe this will fit on something else that I have. Or no, actually, I just want to sell the scope and get rid of it. But maybe some of these other parts will work on something else. Yeah, I'm none too pleased. But thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks to patrons of the Destructive Arts for unfortunately purchasing a bad product. I'm really sorry, you guys, for wasting your money in this case, but hopefully we are saving other people's money in the future. So I appreciate you guys, and maybe some others out there will. I'll see y'all around. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.